Hey there, guys. Welcome to my presentation on natural law and astrology, unlocking our true self. I feel like astrology and natural law really go hand in hand, and my background is actually from a more modern astrology perspective with some traditional thrown in. But when I came to evolutionary astrology and saw how closely linked with natural law it just really is hand in hand. I just thought I'm just very happy to be able to talk about this subject. So let's dive in. All right. So no matter how distorted and unnatural the man-made structure we call society is, we as God-made beings find ourselves endeavoring to reunite with the truth within us, to reconnect and abide by the natural laws of this construct we call reality. I feel like it really is intrinsic to us, to just automatically by nature know how to be in alignment with natural law. And yet, so many seedlings fail to take root, fail to find fertile, nutrient-rich soil in which to grow our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual selves. So how do we reclaim our sovereignty and unlock our true selves? How do we become reacquainted with nature so that we can exist or express ourselves, I need to say, without the gravity of our baggage and social conditioning impeding the purest, clearest voice of our soul and spirit? So, of course, there are many methods. There's lots of ways to get to the end goal, you could say. And yeah, like I said, many ways to reach the goal of evolution, if we could call it that. We quantify that as, or qualify it as, self-actualization in many circles, which I equate to embodying our true self. And some of us are more effective at this process than others. That is undeniable. However, I wonder if it needs to be that way. So today I'm going to talk about natural law and astrology and how it can be used in the self-actualization process for even the most severely ill, damaged, or wayward among us, which is me. So I'm using myself as an example here because my life experience for very much of my life, I felt I was severely mentally and emotionally ill, considered myself quite damaged and wayward, entered into life with early childhood trauma, like sexual and emotional trauma. So I feel like when I came into this life, I knew I came here for a reason, and it was very sunshiny, but I feel like I was veered off path. And of course, there was a reason for that, and natural law comes into play. So I'm going to look into that here with some examples. So yeah, back to the slide. With development of one's conscious awareness and the will to realign or refocus this awareness in order to build a working rapport with these natural laws, we can see a considerable healthy shift in a person, considerable. And this awareness can bring about the most optimal opportunities for natural and authentic living as the individual's soul dictates, which is really important to note, that it's as the individual's soul dictates, which is not really how we go about encouraging people generally in our construct of society, I guess. So yes, even in a societal construct like this one here, that is largely out of tune with nature, when one develops their awareness of natural law and their astrological makeup, they arm themselves well, thus improving their chances to enjoy this experience that we call life. So this talk will be highlighting my own personal experiences, like I said, and my observations using my natal chart to illustrate specific examples and a few other things. And also that I believe that a self-actualized expression is actually our most natural way of being. I feel that so deeply inside of me, at least from my perspective. I'm sure other people have different perspectives, of course. So yes, despite the current condition of our shared societal, cultural consensus reality, I do believe that self-actualized expression is natural to us. Being someone with the placements that I have, as you'll see in my life experiences, I feel I have, of course, as do we all, a unique and poignant insight into the idea of what it means to self-actualize ourselves, and why so many are struggling to accomplish this. And also I want to point out, or the point of this talk too, is to share to you guys that it is entirely possible to live your life in a way that is completely natural for you as an individual. It's possible to live and act in ways that are more joyful and filled with love, just naturally. regardless of the karma one has accumulated, regardless of the lessons that one is here to learn in this life. With consciousness and a will to act and a sincere desire, that's the big piece, to be truly free, we can open to a world where we are able to express ourselves purely, sincerely, without lies, without hiding, without ignorance of who we really are and what this construct really is. I feel strongly that this is everyone's right. It's our birthright to be us and to live in concert with nature via a working understanding and healthy respect for natural laws. So yes, how blessed are we to have access to the level and depth of information that we do in this modern day and age, right? Now more people than ever have the opportunity to come and know their true self and the nature of this universe, which I feel very blessed to have access to, honestly. So yeah, let's go in. I'm going to be looking at the 7 hermetic principles of natural law. So that's as per the Kybalion. And so I'm not entirely, I just want to say, like, as far as evolutionary astrology goes, I'm not formally trained in it. So I don't know if you guys necessarily use the exact same principles, but I do feel they align, and also to, of course, just overlap with astrology in such a, I guess maybe symbiotic is a good word to use, or cooperative way that, yeah, I just wanted to illustrate that. And also too, I was going to say, as far as questions, I was going to save those to the end, but if somebody did want to jump in with a point, feel free to interrupt me. That's totally cool. I don't want to, you'll see in my placements, like, I don't want to come off as dogmatic at all. I really want to share. So if anyone wants to step in, please do. So yeah, the principle of mentalism, which is all is mind, the universe is mental. So whether we are consciously aware of this or not, we'll always be in communication with the mind. And not all of us are aware of those implications, of the implications of that, of our choices, and we disregard law unintentionally. That happens all the time. And yet the law still exists, whether we see it or not. So unconscious mental activity that is disproportionately survival focused means disconnection from the higher realms of thought, awareness, and consciousness. It's like shutting a door on those realms of consciousness. But mind is always in communication with us, and we're always in communication with mind. It's constant. I don't think there might not even be a point where it's ever disconnected. So yes, what are the implications of a nescient individual or a group of individuals, communities, countries, and so on, who does not understand the principle of mentalism? Again, these are mostly based on experiential understanding and observation of others and my own studies. What I've come up with really is that mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual confusion is the result, because we're so jarred off path, right? When we're out of alignment with understanding things like the principle of mentalism. And illnesses, maladies, diseases, wars, and strife are just but a few examples of what the result can be when we're nescient or ignorant of the principle of mentalism. So here's my chart, and I'm just talking a little bit about how my ignorance or unknowing of this principle, what kind of result it had for me, because I do feel strongly that we're always it's an endeavor for us to be brought to awareness, I guess, our lives, the path of our lives. We're always coming back to the truth, I guess. We're always endeavoring and walking towards that. And so for a lot of my life, with the principle of mentalism being completely unknown, I made a lot of mistakes, but of course they were meant to be, to put me back on the path. So yes, I'm not lacking conscious awareness of the law of mentalism. Here's an example here. So I did have an inherent understanding of natural laws inside of me, but as you'll see in my chart there with the 9th house moon and how it's opposite Saturn in the 3rd house, and oh boy, well, just a lot of other things that we could really go into in my chart here. Basically, my point is that growing up, I did have an inherent knowing of the truth. I always felt that way, right? But my family had other ideas, I guess you could say, of what the truth was, and they would not tolerate it otherwise. And so a lot of it was suppressed, and also too being the very what's what I'm looking for? Very family-oriented Capricorn type that I was. Loved my mom and my family very much. I decided to abandon, I guess you could say, the truth, my truth, or whatever you would call it. So yes, there's an inherent awareness, but it's not conscious, and we see that the ninth. And also, yes, the Pluto IC square to my Mercury and Sun too shows definitely some, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term, subversive qualities to my expression, from strong figures in my life, authorities really, that had other ideas about how it was I was meant to be and how to behave and what was appropriate to what was appropriate to treat me, like these kinds of things. Like I said, lots of violations experienced very early on in life. And yes, let's see. So where was I? Yeah, so when a parent's aware, though, we could look, it could be such a different experience for a kid, right? So, I'm showing here a bit of my experience, but as well, if a parent had context of natural law, understood natural law, we could really help a child, not really help them, but just foster the most optimal growth in them, because we can teach them right away how to understand that they really are in communication at all times. Why wait until they reach a certain age, right, to teach that? Again, I guess that's just my opinion. But yes, and also too, you'll notice in my chart, the first house, North Node, 7th house, South Node, with Mars conjuncting the South Node. We see a strong desire to grow into being an actualized self with Mars in the South Node there. Very, very much, yet super other people focused at the same time too, right? But yes, we have someone who is very aware of others to the point of forgoing her own inborn knowledge, easily swayed by family and people that she respects, like I was saying, the Capricorn signature. I hope I'm making sense to you guys. Okay, so yes, when lacking awareness continued. The overall result for me without conscious awareness was to fully take on belief systems and worldviews that were so out of resonance with the truth of nature that I ended up developing lack of morality, just to survive, which I consider, Saturn, Jupiter, and Libra. I feel like it was a very, very, very low vibe expression of those energies being played out through the Mars and also through my ascendant. Yeah, so I'd lie all the time. Like, it was like more lies than truth. I'd steal without remorse and manipulate people to suit my goals. Didn't even think about the implications. And my distrust and hatred for myself and others, it just kept getting bigger and bigger, right? The principle of mentalism. I was really creating an interesting container for my reality, I guess you could say. And yeah, so the quality of interactions with people were poor. It was rife with anxiety, violence, aggression, suspicion, paranoia, just not good. And I was telling mind that the world is an unsafe place filled with jerks, rapists, murderers, exploiters, thugs, and criminals. And mind responded in such a way as to confirm my beliefs, to present evidence that I was indeed correct. And the facet of my reality, my conscious was locked onto in these conditions, created a hell of my own making. Because mind is truly a force to be reckoned with. And I think that's why in Hermeticism, it's the first principle of natural law. Conscious awareness examples here. When we're aware that we're in dialogue with mind at all times, the worldview can shift considerably, which is so great, right? That we can literally change our mind. So what was once a cold, unfeeling, exploitative place, which was how I saw it, it even seemed darker. Literally, I'd look around and it was actually darker, with less color, less saturation, becomes lighter, more solid, grounded, and even abundant, and filled with joy and unconditional love, of course, because higher consciousness, right? So an individual can communicate back and forth with mind and create the outlook and opportunities that they require to not only actualize themselves, right? When they have a rapport with mind, they can actually too actualize the soul's desire as that soul pertains to the earth plane, right? So career success, relationship success, peaked, improved physical health condition, and all sorts of other great things. Conscious co-creation becomes part of the individual's reality, and which in turn fosters a sense of empowerment and a realization that we can have a say. We actually do have a say in who we are and what we become and what we create here in the world, right? Talk about empowering. And so yes, next we have the principle of correspondence, as above, so below. I'm sure we've all heard that one, right? As within, so without, etc. What exists inside of us will be reflected in the outer world. How we behave will reflect what experiences and what people come into our lives. How we treat ourselves and others corresponds to how others will treat us as well. What we eat affects our mind, body, and vessel, even affecting the quality of our rapport with our soul and our mind. The principle of correspondence is asking us to walk our talk and live in integrity to the laws. Astrology, when used as a manual of the self and the soul, affords us the knowledge we need to be in as aligned integrity as humanly possible. And of course, it helps us to do so in a way that is natural, you know, it's us. It's really a validating art, you know, practice, art, science, whatever we'd like to call it. And when we live in integrity to the truth, we see the results in ourselves, and we see the results in others, and we see the results out in the world. So lacking awareness brings pain in order to alert us to what needs adjusting. That's why, well, not really why, but I feel like it does at least explain why, why when we're in I guess you could say, a low vibe consciousness, we're going to invite lower vibe experiences to us and vice versa. So looking at my natal chart, we see some sixth house planets, Sun and Mercury in skeptical, somber Capricorn, along with that obsessive, super obsessive Pluto on the fourth house cusp. Feeling somewhat unsafe in the world with the Taurus Chiron retrograde in my 10th house there. And I've experienced lots of worry regarding what people think of me. So this was like in my mind, in my emotions, in my body, even affected how I ate, right? So for many years, I felt unworthy of the love and approval of others, and I wouldn't let them know that. I kept trying to keep up appearances, right? Capricorn and the Leo ascendant, oh my God. Anyway, kept trying to live in a world and perform a role in my work as a person that on a deep subconscious level, I did not want at all. At all. And so examples, again, more here. If you throw in the series opposition to the Sun and the loose opposition to Mercury there, you'll see a mind that can manifest illnesses like nobody's business. It's so crazy. Like I've been able to develop within myself, you know, without knowledge of these principles, right? Just being completely ignorant of them, not having any idea. Excessive social anxiety to the point of agoraphobia, where I was locked in my house. Like I would lock myself in my house and only leave maybe once a month, and that would be with someone that was close to me. That was how nervous I was of being judged for being me, right? Hyperhidrosis, which is excessive sweating, paranoia, like big time, low self-esteem, of course, and borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder. And even this is amazing too, because I've always had great skin up until this point, but at the worst, where it really hit the climax of just being so out of integrity with natural law and being, just so immersed in this construct we call society, you know, trying to fit into that role, and it was so antithetical to who I was. I developed 3-year bout of cystic acne, horrible cystic acne. It was quite profuse. And yeah, that was a result of an overactive mind, which functions with little to no practical understanding of how the mind itself functions, let alone the law of correspondence. So with this, the Pluto Sun Mercury square, big time control issues. Oh man, it's like, that's just life for me, you know, and I'm coming to just understand that and accept. That's a big thing too, right? As far as this correspondence principle goes, is self-acceptance inside is so important if you want to feel safe here in the world. And so just coming to accept the fact that that I have this makeup. With the lack of awareness, though, of natural law, the effect manifests in the mind, right? Get back to the point. Emotions in the body in the form of illnesses and neuroses. Yeah, it manifests in the mind, emotions and body in the form of illnesses and neuroses. And in turn, corresponds to types of people that I would attract and the quality of my interactions, which were filled with a lot of, just unnecessary pain and heartache and jealousy and just conflict and not the fun stuff, right? So what can aid in ideal functioning for such deeply entrenched neuroses? Breath consciousness, breathing more deeply. That helped me so much, something so simple, right? But again, not knowing about things like the principle of correspondence or even how I'm made up astrologically, and being in a world that was more worried about keeping my job and what other people thought of me, I was always breathing in my chest, right? So breathing more deeply, Vipassana meditation specifically, to help recommit to awareness of the core inside of me, who I am, and not being dispersing my energy outside of myself. With all the, if you look at my chart too, I'm very other person centric. So this helps me a lot, just to come back to myself and realize that the value that I seek in the world is actually inside of myself. And yes. So again, like it says here, awareness that the value of oneself is found within. So the less of that people pleasing, less contorting to conform. And let's see what else can aid in ideal functioning, right? For such deeply entrenched neuroses is awareness that feelings are not objective reality. That helps a lot. It helps with less catastrophizing and with more acceptance and trust that which in turn gives mind a chance to provide, because, now, of course, this is my belief, but I've seen proof of this as I become more consciously aware that mind really does want to help us, wants to hook us up. We just got to be open to it, like really on a cellular level, which is no small task, right? Yeah. So to give mind a chance to provide for my desires and needs, the hose is no longer kinked, no longer creating conditions that are painful, undesirable, and enervating. Now, I feel like I might be taking a bit of longer than I thought. So I just wanted to pause for a moment and see, does anyone have any comments or questions, or maybe a rude remark or two? I don't know. Just want to check in. Okay, I'll take that as a no, so I'm going to keep going. Let's see. Yes, so what else can aid in ideal functioning for such deeply entrenched neuroses? And yes, so important with the Sun series context. Oh my God, this has always been an issue for me ever since I was a kid, because, my mom didn't really feed us very well. And I started equating also to love of sugar and all these kinds of things, right? And I would also, too, to punish myself in my adult years, deprive myself of eating until all my work is done. Like such a success Capricorn. Oh man. So yeah, for me, this really helped, was just making sure that I eat properly. That helps a lot. And taking care of the body, right? The principle of correspondence, we want to be healthy inside of ourselves. And also too, making sure that our mind is focused on loving ourselves no matter what, no matter how, how much we screw up or whatever, if we're seeing that in ourselves. And also to other people. That's really important too. We want to love other people unconditionally too. And also humility, Leo ascendant with an Aries midheaven and an Aries moon. Yeah, and all sorts of other things that we could get into. But basically, I am here to learn humility for sure, and grace as well, and super patience. So as I notice that I'm practicing these things more, I'm noticing results in the world actually reflecting back to me that I guess, I'm not alone here. Like there is a conscious rapport going on here with something that I can't quite describe. And yes, so what else can aid in the functioning is acting on the impetus due to knowing the value of as within, so without, acting on the impetus to be diligent and patient as I become more aligned in thought, feeling, and action, which in turn is helping me improve my reputation because I'm not a lying jerkbag anymore. And, I'm being more conscious of the fact that, there is a way to be true to who we are, and that involves being brave sometimes and saying stuff that your seventh house Mars doesn't want to say to people because it's easier just to be quiet, especially with the Aquarius going on there. It's just easier to disconnect and not engage in the dialogue that's going anywhere good with Saturn and Jupiter and Libra. They're very happy when everyone's happy, but at the same time too, You know, it's important to be honest and upfront. So yes, resulted in things like improved reputation, trust from others, improved mental outlook, emotions are more balanced, which is great. Not perfect, obviously, because I feel a lot of my life lesson is to feel comfortable in my body. And so I'll admit I definitely do have strong physical sensations in my body when, for instance, even doing this talk, you know, these kinds of things. Still some remnants of anxiety there, but it's, you know, thank goodness for astrology, right? Natural law, because it's helping. What can I say? So yeah, and the physical vessels are can be, the physical vessel is more energetic and healthy, and spiritual connection is stronger, which means all planes of our existence, or at least the ones we know about, are on a even keel. You know, they're talking to each other and understanding each other's language. They're on the same level, I guess you could say, which is what we want. We want to be balanced. We want to be within integrity, I guess you could say, on multiple planes. All right, next, principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates, no matter how solid or dense. This principle links into the previous laws and principles, as do all of the 7 pragmatic principles of natural law. What you vibe is what you're calling into your experience. So if we were all radio towers, you could say, right? The quality and the clarity and the type of music or frequency that we're vibrating at will determine what we're calling into our body, mind, emotions, and experience in the world, within ourselves and with other people. And of course, what frequency or quality we're vibrating at calls in what we ultimately attract. But what happens when we're conditioned to vibrate at a frequency that is not suitable or adequate to our needs or who we are, right? We attract unwanted and undesirable experiences, or at least that's what we think. We're like, why the hell is this happening? But I feel it's very much on a deep, deep level. It's the core of us trying to get us back on track, to alert us that something is obviously not right, you could say. And yes, so this can be become a downward moving whirlpool that pulls the soul into an abyss that can be difficult to free themselves from when operating in a state of ignorance of the self, how the self functions, and natural laws. Yes, so the principle of vibration, some observations again. So for a significant portion of my life, I was vibrating at a super low, super venomous, gross, like just putrefied, dark frequency filled with hate, mistrust, and pessimism. And we can certainly say that this was the desire of the soul to go through these experiences. I find it hard to argue that, because it feels like it feels entirely true that that's exactly what I was planning on when I came in here, when I jumped into this vessel, you could say. So that said, what are the implications of living your formative years in the company of individuals who are also vibrating at a low or dark frequency, and on top of that, lack the conscious awareness of natural law? What are the implications? You get festering putrefaction of the cognition, or at least, you know, metaphorically, right? Because you can't really destroy. I feel like on a soul level, the soul, if it's strong enough, we can turn anything around, right? So the quality of the vibration densifies within a person, spurring about calcification of all sorts in the mind, body, emotions, and so on. Examples of this and how it played out for myself and many others that I've observed. And I didn't note this here, but you know, physical locks. You can definitely get locked up in your body, like unexplained tendinitis and things like that. But yeah, sociopathic tendencies can begin to develop just as a need to, you know, you're almost in animal mode, or at least where I came from, the individuals that I grew up around and lived with for a very long time. You know, we all exhibited these behaviors. It was just the way of life, really, in our neighborhood, you could say. Lack of empathy or compassion for other life forms, you know, lying without remorse, so we could say killing without remorse too, manipulations of others for one's personal gain, apathy towards life and life goals, nihilism, atheism, excessive narcissism, racism, prejudices of all kinds when we're out of vibration with the truth of who we actually are, and we're living in a construct that is just so antithetical to our natural vibration. It's just my belief based on what I know, you know, so I don't want to act like I'm the final arbiter here or anything, but I feel like these results are literally, you know, because of, well, an effect. We'll get to cause and effect later, but yeah, this is what you see when vibration densifies to these kinds of levels. So the heart often the body begin to vibrate at lower, more dense frequencies, which in turn produce emotions like hatred, jealousy, greed, sadness, depression, seething, resentment, and so on, which attracts other beings and entities, we could say, that feed on and are attracted by such vibrations. And this can be applied to high vibe too, right? Like we can have entities, we could say, or other beings or people even, that we attract when we're at a higher vibe that, you know, are, I guess, what is the word? It's natural to congregate, I guess, together, depending on our vibration, right? And so the level of resentment and hatred that one can develop when disconnected from what is, at least in my opinion, their birthright, which is a working knowledge of natural law, results in a distorted state of the world. You know, when you're out of alignment here, it results in a distorted state of the world, just straight up. And it ends up ultimately distorting the mental, emotional, physical health of an individual, or how those faculties are being expressed. And of course, we can change our frequency and unfold ourselves into higher and higher vibrations if we use our will to do so. That's the fun part, right? As evidenced by observation of human history and the current state of the world, along with most people residing here, there is still a huge gap in understanding how this construct of reality actually operates, which has resulted in a lot of damage being wrought onto the planet and all who live here in varying degrees, which we, you know, it's pretty obvious when we look around that we're quite out of alignment with the natural order of things in many ways. So yes, endeavoring to vibrate in the truth of to who we are. For me, this is something that is taking time to master, of course. I feel this is definitely something that we're all here to master in our own ways. In my chart here, though, with Chiron in the 10th house in Taurus there, and it's also retrograde, and Venus being Chiron's ruler in mutual reception to Saturn, along with my North Node on my ascendant. And also, let's just chuck in the neuroses experienced by the sixth house Sun-Mark combo. It's been a challenge, and the great thing about Chiron, though, in Taurus, I will say, as I'm getting older and coming to realize, is that what I'm starting to learn actually what it feels like, or you could say vibrates like, right? Like what the vibration, that sensation feels like. I can understand these feelings of inadequacy and lack of safety in the world that I feel. I'm starting to experience them more objectively, more and more and more, in a way that is helping me see that this is probably going to be me for my life. Probably never going to feel comfortable out in public, right? But at the same time, too, I don't think I'm the only one, right? A lot of us put ourselves, when we want to be who we are and really align to who we are, it does feel almost dangerous. Like our life is at risk to just be who we are. So I get to get an interesting insight, I guess, in this life into just that experience, and hopefully I'll be able to help people with that too, so we can all feel safer here, because I feel that is natural. Yeah, so it is quite a lesson to learn how to maintain my natural inherent vibration despite the urge to dampen and hide myself out of fear of rejection. And so that others can shine, that would be what I would do. I would just shut up and, you know, typical. I mean, a lot of people have this type of an issue, right? So yes, let's move on. Let's go to cause and effect, which is every cause has its effect, every effect has its cause, and so on. And my favorite part, of course, is there are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. There is always a reason for everything, which is kind of comforting. I kind of like that. Or at least, you know, this is what I subscribe to, right? When life doesn't go our way and we don't notice the patterns, what we're reaping, we end up coming against all sorts of disappointments and setbacks, or at least as we consciously perceive them, yeah? And if we're nescient or ignorant of these evaluations, we could call them, we often fail, experience unwanted pain, and literally or metaphorically fall to our knees, cursing to the heavens, wailing, why me? Why does this keep happening? Which is literally what I've done many, many, many times in my life. Oh man. With, you know, complete with the drama, because why not? Astrology is indispensable, though, in understanding greater life lessons that we experience, what imperative we're being asked to recognize, right? Like our soul's imperative, I guess you could say, right? And how to take the wheel in life. Astrology helps us so much with that. It's just such a wonderful thing, right? And along with an awareness of natural laws and principles, we're equipped with the knowledge needed to plant our seeds in nutrient-rich soil and reap the benefits of conscious sowing, right? We can actually have a conscious say in what we're creating, which is so empowering. Astrology just really boosts our ability to be effective in that way. So yes, my personal experience of unconscious dialogue with the law of cause and effect, an unconscious dialogue. Oh boy, so many unconscious, undesired effects have I experienced. So let's talk a bit about it. As I said, I have some very strong control issues with the Pluto square to Sun Mercury, along with the square from Ceres to Pluto, and the arrogant as hell ninth house moon in Aries, no less. Ruled by Mars, seventh house on the descendant, etc., etc., etc. Right, along with how I was raised, very controlling home environment, very controlling, even in the community, super controlling and just small-minded, I guess you could say. Right, I don't mean to say that judgmentally, but the metaphor fits. I developed the notion that manipulation and control of everything and everyone is how you got ahead in life and how you win. Oh boy, with a Saturn and Libra, to go on that path and meet up with your Saturn return. I've got stories for that. Yeah, definitely. Saturn definitely wants to make sure I learned that lesson the hard way. But it was necessary. And yeah, I just threw in the 12th house Lucifer to my natal moon, the trine there. Oh boy, like I said, just manipulating people without any remorse, right? So I thought if anyone had a comment on the Lucifer placement later, that would be interesting and welcomed. Anyway, once I came to understand that cause and effect was indeed a real and important principle to be aware of, I understood why it's so important to live in integrity. And sometimes we need to get hit by a truck to learn our lessons, and I appreciate that the truck hit me smack in the face multiple times and backed up over me and drove over me again. And thank goodness I became involved with Lady Astrology. What a blessing. So happy, because she taught me that for one, to be in integrity, to be true to an individual's soul, means that we need to be who we really are and allow that identity to express freely. And that means not trying to force fit people and situations to suit what I think is right or correct, right? Cause and effect, along with knowledge of our soul and our vessel's blueprint via astrology, for this, of course, applies to everyone. It helps us avoid all sorts of unwanted effects in life, undesirable experiences. Our relationships reflect our desires with more congruency, and to our work and our livelihood. And of course, our self-expression will yield results that are closer to what our soul and spirit and even what our heart wants, right? It's good to know. Another thing that I learned was what I put in is what I get back. So important, right? Valuable lesson that has helped me go from housebound levels of agoraphobia, like I said, severe depression and suicide ideation, deeply felt hatred for authority and government, and feelings that I'm just broken and unfortunate, which was seriously like 3 decades of my life almost. Bound for a life of disappointment after disappointment. That was where my mind was. I went from that, learning these laws and practicing astrology, and also, other practices that I came across as I after, I will call it the catalyst that happened in my life when I got hit by the truck. We will call Saturn. So yeah, bound for a life of disappointment, these low vibe thoughts, right? And just not understanding that I was at a hand in this, right? At all, to a conscious co-creator in mind, body, spirit, and soul. And I'm sowing seeds within myself, my relationships, and my livelihood, which is so important to me, of course, right? That I intend to reap desired benefit from. And even now, I've begun to accumulate life experiences that prove that cause and effect is unbiased and always just, which is helps me accept my just what I'm being asked to do here. It helps to understand that there is a structure in place. It helps. And what you put in is always what you get back. All right, so I don't know if I have time to complete everything, but I'm gonna go through and as far as I can go. So yes, principle of polarity here. This is an interesting one. And again, it's everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites, right? And like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are half truths. And I love this. All paradoxes can be reconciled. This is an interesting principle. They all are, but this is an interesting one because it teaches us so many things, despite it being actually relatively simple. But aren't they all, right? I suppose knowing that all things are dual opens up astrological interpretation, for example, thus deepening our understanding of placements and zodiac signs. When I came across this realization, it really helped me understand like the Capricorn Cancer archetype and the Libra Aries archetype, etc. And like here as an example, knowing that Capricorn does have a drop of Cancer in it, the desire and capacity to show and receive love, empathy, and nurturance. Pardon me. And that Cancer holds a drop of Capricorn in that it wants structure, stability, and in a way, in its way, a calculating focus on what matters most to them, right? They want to build something in their own way. And yes, so polarity and correspondence very much go hand in hand in that they show us that we are not an island, right? We don't live in a vacuum. We can see evidence in the world that all things are polar, everything is dual. And yes, let's go on. So knowledge of this basic truth can be used to an individual's benefit through understanding and application of their Pluto polarity point, for example, right? And as well as their natal Pluto. Example for me here is, let's see, oh wait, no. Seeing that although my soul is quite other person centric, you know, in my chart here with my Pluto there in Libra, and also I guess being on the IC would also be true as well. In order to experience relationship with and others, it's imperative for me, as much as I want this so badly, right? Like I just really, really just want harmonious relations and for everyone to love each other and for everything to be fine at a very deep core level, right? For everyone to accept each other. But for that to work, I can't be a people pleaser. I can't lie to people, right? I can't manipulate them. That's not going to work. Instead, what I needed to do is be who I am and just tell the truth and also value who I am without defining that value on the opinions of others, which is the other part, right? Such an important thing. So the depths of my love for others that I have in me and my artistry and my soft Venusian ways that nobody sees because they're so deeply buried. Well, I mean, not that no one sees it, but I feel that way. Must be realized by embodying without fear that war god, that Aries war god, the warrior, the defender, the individual, because Aries is so individual within me. I need to embrace that, right? And where am I being called to go on this trek of self-actualization to embody my true self? Of course, just where my Chiron wants me to be, on the world stage. No more hiding in my IC for me, not in this life anyway. I had 30 years of that and I got booted out. So much understanding of oneself can be derived from understanding the polar opposite of our sun, our moon, and our north node axis as well, and all of our planets and angles and points, really, right? Examples of how this plays out to the uninitiated, we could say, in astrology or natural law. Personal experience, noting the Ceres Sun opposition, a lack of understanding and struggle to express my Capricorn Cancer archetypes within myself. So I would be very cold. You know, that's still probably always going to be a little bit of a thing, but anyway, and also the bossiness. Lacking in empathy, though, that was, you know, this is something that it's been brought to my attention, and thank goodness for astrology, because that has really been what's put it in front and center of me. Because also, too, if you'll notice from my chart, I do lack water. So I just inherently, like, even though I actually can sense people's feelings, the empathy piece feels quite foreign to me. So yeah, knowing these things, though, has helped so much, right? Let's move down here. What do I have? Yeah, let's just go back, actually. So lacking in empathy and consideration of people's feelings in favor of focusing on and telling people what they should be doing, judgments and lacking compassion and unconditional acceptance of the self and others in the world, etc. What was playing out, you know, with this lack of knowledge. And if you throw in the 6th house sun, opposite the 12th house, especially the Ceres there, definitely victim mentality. And the might even have something to do with that because of having that such a tight trine to my moon. And my mom was very much a victim, like she embodies that role very, very, very vehemently, we could say. So yes, I was definitely not understanding why that was the case, you know, but having that chance to look in that 12th house that I may not have looked at before and given much consideration on looking at the polar opposite, you know, of my Capricorn, I learned quite a lot. Okay, so yes, an Aries Libra archetypes playing out through the Leo North Node Aquarius conjunct Mars South Node. I would vacillate, you know, and I'm still working on this, of course, between a desire to be liked for my individuality and wanting to be aloof, left alone, and what I call the mega hipster douchebag to beat all hipster douchebags. So developing a conscious awareness of the oppositions within me has helped me so much. Like I said, it's just helped me to express these seemingly disparate facets of my being and my soul's imperatives. So when an awareness of one's astrology dynamics or their makeup is developed, like I was saying, it helps the individual in their effort to simply exist and to act out one's mental, emotional, worldly, and spiritual development in ways that make sense to them. So important, right? That's who we are naturally too. To express ourselves naturally, we need to do these things, to develop these things. And depending on the inherent capacity for higher awareness, the individual awareness of the, I'll read that again. And depending on the inherent capacity for higher awareness of the individual, this knowledge can be it can exponentially leap their progress as a soul living in an unnaturally structured society. I can speak from experience, like the cognitive development that I've had in 7 years versus my first 30 is quite significant, all because of coming upon natural law and astrology largely, in addition to things like meditation and other things as well, life experiences. But these tools, or at least these, you know, I'll just call them these blessings really, are just, you know, so indispensable to help us realign to who we are. I feel very strongly about that. So yes, principle of rhythm now. Okay, I got about 10 minutes, I think. Principle of rhythm, everything flows out and in, everything has tides, everything rises and falls, right? Rhythm compensates. Life follows many natural rhythms, and as astrologers, we are able to track many of these cycles. So solar returns, Saturn returns, Jupiter returns, nodal returns, and more. So we swing back and forth between polarities. Each pendulum swing, every rotation of the wheel, we're met with opportunities to meet what comes and have a say in how we respond, which is pretty cool. When operating from ignorance, though, we end up repeating unwanted experiences, resulting in much frustration, disappointment, and despair. We feel like we're being forced to endure vicissitudes of life like a leaf in the wind, like seaweed being swayed by the winds of the ocean. Like we have no control, right, over what's happening, or we have no say in the matter. And for some, this is experienced mentally or emotionally through disorders like bipolar or mania, you know. They don't understand why those rhythms are happening. Or even we could look at like massive PMS, like PMDD, these kinds of things too could link into that as well. Okay. And yes, so one of the more popular rhythms in astrology, or at least in pop astrology, is the Saturn return. Lacking conscious awareness of this important cycle can result in some major pain. For me, I was forced to face my demons big time. And the result was a psychotic break, literally, that left me feral for weeks. I even tried to commit suicide. Saturn was very insistent that I learn this lesson right the hell now. And with my Saturn being in Libra, along with the contacts that Saturn makes in the chart there, you know, so there's a very tight trine to Mars, and also the ascendant, there's a sextile there going on, and other things as well. For me, I was forced to face my demons, yes, blah, blah, blah. But I was asked to rehash and look square in the face at the injustices that I ignored, you know, growing up, because I didn't prosecute. I didn't follow up on some of the people that abused me, and in turn, I found out later that I ended up abusing other people. So that was quite devastating. And yes, so I had to look those things square in the face, and also the injustices I wrought on others with, you know, impunity. And it was a devastating period in my life, and yet the ultimate catalyst that spurred about my awakening. Super, super important, had to happen. So without a clear understanding and a very rudimentary, shallow knowledge at best of natural law and astrology at this point in my life, I was very much cursing my lot in life. Thought I was cursed, literally. And I thought that I must have done something horrible to deserve such a life. In fact, that was my mantra. I honestly didn't understand why I was reaping so much conflict, hardship, and woe. Yet Saturn always knows better, right? Always. And luckily for us, we do get a chance to meet up with Dad every so often, quote unquote, Dad, to reevaluate the path that we're walking on. Have a look and make sure, where the hell are we going? And had I known well that natural law was real, because I had my doubts still, and that astrology was the master key that it truly is, I would have traversed through this period in a way that yielded cookies and other fine rewards, right? But for me, it was a major hard knock, like I said, and luckily it was just the stuff I needed to get back on track. Many rhythms and cycles occur throughout our lives, right? Minutes, seconds, years, et cetera, et cetera. We rise and fall, and we rise and fall. And I feel strongly that much pain can be avoided in our lives when we humbly accept that this is the nature of reality on this plane. And yet so many cling, on myself as well, right? To hold on to people, possessions, ideals that must be allowed to ebb and flow along with the current of life. Principle of gender, this is the last one. So I think I might just get in here in time. So yeah, gender is in everything, right? That's kind of cool, actually. I think that's the cool thing about this principle. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. So finally, yes, I'd like to talk about gender. All people have a gender, and yet everyone has their masculine and feminine qualities. And this means that a man will have a feminine side and a woman will have her masculine side, right? And in the Western world, until somewhat recently, we have held fairly strict rules with regard to gender roles. It's only really been in recent years and decades that we're coming to accept people who choose to push the boundaries of these man-made gender roles. Nonetheless, males and females require a sense of safety in order to openly, authentically express both sides of their nature. As their soul dictates, they need to feel safe to do that, lest we run into all sorts of mental, emotional, physical, sexual, and spiritual challenges, illnesses, confusions, and disillusionments, and more. And proven by the principle of cause and effect, correspondence, and even mentalism, in the world today, among individuals, we're seeing some healthy expressions of the principle of gender being played out healthily in a person's natural expression, and some that may be quite unnatural and unhealthy, which may be controversial for me to say, but we won't get into that. All right, so gender acceptance struggles in my experiences here, being a bit of a tomboy there, right, that I am. I've always known I was female, of course, right? But however, I'm a female with strong masculine qualities. And even my physical appearance in some ways is somewhat masculine, not as typically voluptuous as women are ideally seen to be, but ideally seen, of course, in this current consensus reality that we've got going on, I guess you could say. The narrative of those around me during my formative years and beyond were quite unforgiving. And the belief propagated was one where women, in order to be considered a woman, right, like a real woman, a sexy woman, whatever, must meet very constrained and specific criteria, qualities, attributes, behaviors, whatever. And for example, I was told more than once that I need to pipe down and stop being so loud and brash. It's unladylike. Yet, as seen in the natal chart, I've got a lot of fire going on at a soul level, and a soul level desire to express it, and really, masculine, I guess we could say, fire being masculine, right? And really, in order to show respect for myself and the quality and proportion of these genders that reside within me, it's so key to trust that it's all right for me to be this way. It's okay, right? To have a masculine Mars, a masculine moon, masculine ascendant, a masculine midheaven, whatever, right? To have masculine, everyone has it, right? It's okay to be that way. And so it's, for me, always had these especially with those Libra placements in my third house, etc. I would feel such incredible guilt if I ever got angry in a quote unquote inappropriate situation. But sometimes, is that such a bad thing for Aries? I mean, sometimes it just needs to happen, and then it's all good, like 2 minutes later, right? So yeah, it was letting myself do that kind of stuff and speak emphatically with passion be fiery, right? Assertive when called to be, rather than what I was taught to be, which was a people pleaser, a liar, a manipulator. And of course, I'm female too, and some of the healthier ways to express this femininity, at least with people, and with regard to people, is having more softness, compassion, and grace, being receptive to the voice of my intuition and acting accordingly is how I qualify grace, which at least in this situation, which often where people are concerned, being graceful too means being kind, caring, and unconditionally accepting to the individuality of other people. So important to hold space for them to be just that, but not too squishy, right? Because I want to balance my masculine and feminine. So we're at a point in time where gender and gender roles can be quite confusing. But with an understanding of natural laws and one's personal natal chart and, other charts too, right? I feel that many people stand to find solace and empowerment too, in knowing that they are perfectly imperfect. It's totally cool, right? Just the way they are, and there's no need to go outside of nature in order to find that inner peace, self-acceptance that they long for. Even a basic understanding of their elemental makeup, even just that, of a person can aid them considerably in expressing their gender mixture in ways that evoke joy and self-acceptance from deep within themselves. And that is my unceremonious end to my talk. And yeah, did anyone have a comment or question or anything? I would love to hear. Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much, Sarah. Could you please click on stop share at the top of the screen?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions?
I don't have questions. I'd just like to say, Sarah, that I really appreciate the time you spent explaining the natural laws. It's a part of EA I haven't really looked at so much. And it really was very informative for me. So I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you, Carolyn. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
Very good talk. I don't necessarily have a question either, but I can relate to a lot of what you presented, in your talk, having placements, strong placements in North Node in the ninth, and having a lot of masculine, energy as a female, and like I said, those gender roles and all of that. So I really, really resonated with what you talked about.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Wanda. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that, you guys. Okay, well, I guess there's no more questions. I just want to say thanks so much, guys, for giving me the opportunity. This was wonderful. Thank you. I'm looking forward to having the chance again later. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks for opening up so deeply and honestly. Fantastic meeting. So much information and finishing exactly on time. How's that?
I love when that happens. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, everyone. And could you all please thank Sarah Peterson?
Thank you, Sarah. That was great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Loved it.
Thank you.